Hey Squishies! Welcome back to another vlog. This is Dirty Pair, episode 25. The Man in the Mansion is a Terminator, I think is what it was called. I'm feeling increasingly sad about getting to the end of this series. It was really fun to watch. And really very refreshingly different from most of what I watch, and just generally very good. Except when it wasn't. And this episode is a really good example of both, because it's really good, and then falls apart. It took me forever to remember who Calico is, but eventually I figured it out. And I like the changing up of the dynamic. I like that Kay is forced to be in the position of the experienced, responsible person who has to tell the rash, violent one to knock it off with the excessive destruction. That's a fun reversal. Yuri going on a terrible date is something that has happened before, but I feel like going on a terrible date and then getting pissed off and doing something borderline violent is more of a Kay thing. So there was a bit of a role changing up there too. Which, let's just say, what the hell? The minute the guy said... Okay, first of all, just the fact that the guy was reading at dinner is a red flag. But the fact that he said, you know, you don't chatter all... Like, he responded to the first thing Yuri said to him with, oh, I like that you don't chatter all the time like those other women. Okay, first of all, anything couched in those other women, like anything which basically presents, oh, women are terrible, but you're an exception? Okay, you're dealing with a misogynist there, and he doesn't really think you're an exception. Or if he does, he'll be changing his mind soon. And even if he does think you're an exception, do you really want that? So there's that, for starters. And then... so I liked that that was depicted as a legitimately terrible date. Good on the show for recognizing that any guy who says that line is going to be awful. So that was fun. The Kay and Calico adventure was a lot of fun. The fact that the target actually seemed like a pretty decent pair of people. Who didn't want to hurt the trouble consultants. The very sympathetic motivation of wanting revenge for their son who committed suicide because a bank framed him for financial misdoings. That's all really good stuff. That's, really solid storytelling there. And it's a really excellent 11 minutes, followed by... Like, it just falls apart. Yuri... Like, basically, Kay and Calico get locked in the basement, and threatened with the most generic of all Bond villain traps, the slow-moving laser on the table. While Yuri goes and adventures upstairs on her own. And while there is sometimes something to be gained by putting Yuri by herself, especially if you're going for a kind of horror-esque vibe, she makes a nice parody of the final girl. In the sense that she's a screamer, she's, very feminine, but immediately after screaming, she will pull out a gun and shoot the thing that's threatening her. But it just... There's no reason given for why the robot son goes berserk. We already know he's a robot son, so there's no tension there, because we were told there's a Terminator in the mansion, and obviously it's the dead son who's moving around. And obviously being a Terminator is just going to keep coming, because that's what Terminators do. And it doesn't really engage with anything about the movie at all. Like, they've done parodies and pastiches before, but this is literally just ganking the Terminator itself and putting it in a completely different story in a way that doesn't create anything interesting from the juxtaposition. I mean, they've done so much better than that in the past. This is kind of weak by comparison. So that's disappointing. And then at the end, I love when the Dirty Pair pull strings to let the sympathetic villain off. But even that felt very perfunctory. It felt flat. Like, oh, we've written ourselves into a corner by making this elderly couple too sympathetic. Let's have the Dirty Pair blackmail Calico with his comedically bad performance earlier. It just doesn't fit. I don't know. I really hope the next episode is a good one, because I feel like the series... Like I said, I'm sad it's ending, but I'm also glad it's ending, because it really feels like they're just running on empty. It feels like the first half of this episode was one last burst of energy after a pretty episode last time. They had this burst of energy, but it wasn't enough to carry them even through a whole episode. And that's sad. But it kind of does imply that this is a series whose time has come. Now, I know there's a movie, and there's an OVA series, and there's another series, and there's a lot of Dirty Pair content out there, but I have to assume that they got a break before making those, because making a 26-episode season of television is a pretty rough schedule. It's not an easy thing to do. It's very labor intensive, especially for animation. There's a reason that prestige format shows in the US tend to go for 10 or 12, because making 20 plus good episodes of television in one television season is quite an ask. And honestly, there's very few who have ever managed to do it. Very few shows. Now, there are 26-episode anime that have managed to be good throughout, but there's still always ups and downs in quality. There's still always that one episode. Or in the case of Dirty Pair, those 6 or 7-ish episodes. And unfortunately, they seem to be mostly concentrated near the end, which to me definitely says, energy is flagging, ideas are running out. Whoever it is that's creating these needs a break. But there's still one episode left, and there's still the hope that for the last one they pull it out. They pull out all the stops and they do something probably not as good as the best episodes, but at least good. You know, something that manages to consistently be as good as the first half of this episode would be A-okay. But we'll see. Yeah, that's about it. Thank y'all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Check out my Patreon for early access to vlogs, Let's Plays, essays, and more. And I'll see y'all next time. Bye!